Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to find out which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com and this is my good friend and co-host Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
So this is just a little updated intro. This is a replay. We've had a lot of requests. A lot of people don't know that we covered this book. It was quite a long time ago. So welcome. You probably know why we're reposting this episode because there's some really big buzz going on about this Wicked movie that's coming out. We're going to be talking about, of course, Frank L. Baum's The Wizard of Oz. And I'm actually interested. I don't even remember what we discussed. I live in San Diego where there's a connection to Frank L. Baum. I don't know if I told my story about the Munchkin, the Lollipop League guy.
I think you did.
Okay. So it was a long time ago, but welcome. If you have suggestions for upcoming episodes, you want to meet other listeners of this podcast, interact with us, there's a few places where you can do that on the internet.
We have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it. All the episodes are posted there, but we're much more interactive in our private Facebook group. You type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group and ask to join, and then you come on in and have the fun with us. We're on Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Book versus Movie Podcast. And then we have an old-timey email, Book versus Movie Podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. And we just ask that, it's on a major streaming platform and that it's pretty easy for us to get our hands on. But also, if you would like some stickers, just email us your address and we will drop them in the mail for you.
Yes, we have updated socials, and also now you'll be able to access this episode on YouTube on our respective channels. So Margot's channel is under her name, Margot Donahue. Mine is under She's Not Your Mama, and yeah, I'm going to listen to this and because I don't remember at all. I have a good idea of what we talked about. But I haven't read The Wizard of Oz, I think, since we did the episode.
Yeah,
and
it's been a while.
I've never seen, I'm going to just put it out there. I am totally unfamiliar with Wicked. I vaguely know what it's about. Never saw the musical. Don't know any of the songs. Looking forward to seeing it, but I'm not part of the fandom. Have you seen it?
No, I have not seen it, and I live in New York, which is considered a crime. That it's one of those shows that everybody has seen, and I have not seen it yet. My problem is that I tried to read the book, the source for that material, in two different book clubs, and could not get through it, and so I think that stopped me. And people say it's funny. Different from the musical is different from the book that it's derived from.
That book. I remembered now. I forgot about that book. And I had a similar experience that I had to read that book for a previous job that I was in at the time. And I also could not get through that book. I just couldn't, I don't know. I couldn't find my groove with it. And it was the same thing like with the musical that people loved that book. So at some point when the movie Wicked is streaming on a major platform and we will get through it for you guys. We'll do it. We'll buckle down and get through that book. So we will tackle it at a future date. But for now, we hope that you will enjoy our original take on The Wizard of Oz.
We've done what you told us. We've brought you the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West. We melted her.
Oh, you liquidated her, eh? Very resourceful.
Yes, sir. So we'd like you to keep your promise to us, if you please, sir.
Not so fast. Not so fast. I'll have to give the matter a little thought. Go away and come back tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Oh, but I want to go home now.
You've had plenty of time already.
Do not arouse the wrath of the great and powerful Oz. I said come back tomorrow.
If you are really great and powerful, you'll keep your promises.
Do you presume to criticize the great Oz? You ungrateful creatures think yourselves lucky that I'm giving you audience tomorrow instead of 20 years from now. Oh, the great Oz has spoken. Oh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great Oz has spoken.
Who are you?
For I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
You are? I don't believe you.
No, I'm afraid it's true. There's no other wizard except me. You humbug! Yes, it's exactly so. I'm a humbug.
Oh, you're a very bad man.
Oh, no, my dear. I'm a very good man. I'm just a very bad wizard.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie, a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of the Chingona Homesteader, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
It's 2019!
Yay!
We made it! Can't believe it. Yeah, another new year of Book versus Movie. We are doing a redo today. But before we get to that, we want to mention a few things for our new listeners. We know we picked up a lot of new people over the holidays. There are some places online where you can engage with us and discuss books and movies.
Absolutely. So we do have a Facebook page. Go to Facebook and type in Book versus a Movie, spell it all out. But we also have a Facebook group, which is a great place to interact. We're a little more interactive there. We put some clips and people put in their own polls in there and stuff like that. So you just type in Book VS Movie Podcast Group in Facebook, ask to join, and we'll get you right in. And another place to reach out to us is at Twitter, at Book versus Movie, spell it out. Margot, we're both named Margot, by the way, in case you're new to the show. She started an Instagram page for us. We finally got onto that a few months ago. So you can find us there and tag us if you like what you see. And if you have any comments or suggestions, you can email us at bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And also we have a stack of stickers. So if y'all want Book versus Movie stickers, let me know. Just send us an email, bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com.
And we also have a new review on Apple Podcast.
Yes, we do. So we asked you guys, if you leave us a 5-star review, we will read it on the air. And we got one today. I want to read to you guys. This is from Vero Sapphire. That's her name in iTunes. I've been listening to Book versus Movie for a while now. Love the Margos, their discussions, and enjoy the clips they insert for the show. And they are so funny, and I love listening to this podcast at work. And my favorite episodes are the horror adaptations. So one day they can do Let the Right One In. Now, Margot, have you ever seen this movie? There's a Swedish version. It is scary as shit. I'm not sure if you can handle it. It's a pretty...
I'm a big chicken.
Yes.
I've never even heard of this movie.
It's a vampire movie, and it's a kid who's a vampire, and she has a male friend who takes care of her. And you guys that know the movie, there's a particular scene towards the very end that creeps me out. And I'm someone that loves scary stuff and been reading Stephen King since I was like 10 years old. So I didn't know it was a book first. I might look into that, but I just want to warn you, Margot, that's a pretty scary one. The movie anyway.
A blood-sucking child?
Yes.
Raised by a man who's not her parent? What could possibly go wrong?
Well, they're two kids. So he's a child that's like neglected at school, and then she becomes his friend, but he can only see her at night because she's a demon.
They're vampires. Yeah. Yeah. That's how it is.
So thank you so much, though, for leaving that suggestion and for leaving us a review in iTunes. And we have another one, but I'll read it next time.
Okay, great. So, we also want to mention, did we mention Audible?
No, let me mention that right now. For you guys that listen to Book versus Movie, we have an Audible connection. Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. There are several versions of the book movie today, The Wizard of Oz. Many, many, many there on Audible. And this isn't a long book to read. I thought it was really fun to, sometimes people ask how we do this show. It's very hard to, read all these books, see all the movies, get our notes together and stuff like that. So Margot and I both are big fans of Audible because you can just take it wherever you're going. If you're on your commute to work or working out at the gym or walking home from the gym for me. So to try it today, just go to audibletrial.com/book versus movie. And again, that's audibletrial.com/book versus movie.
Now, so today we're doing a redo. This is an episode that we did quite a long time ago. It's one of those, like, sometimes way back there, things kind of get lost in the archives. And when people start asking like, hey, you should do this book and movie that we've already done, we kind of know it's time for a redo. So people have been asking us to do this book and movie for quite a while. And so we are happy to be redoing The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, we recorded this a few years ago, but it was the old way we used to record things. And Margot and I would call into a line, and then it would record our podcast, and it had the habit of dropping off. And so that was one where I started talking, and then you couldn't get back on for a while. And anyway, so it was a big old mess. And it always made me sad because you and I did a ton of research for this, and there is so much to talk about here. So I was really excited to do this one. I'm glad you wanted to do it as well.
Oh yeah, it was really time. Like I said, people have been asking for a while, and you're right. It was a mess.
Oh, it was a mess.
So, you could tell that's the other clue that we have is that when people go, "Oh, can you do, for example, The Wizard of Oz?" and our immediate response is not, "Oh, you should listen to this episode that we did." Because we can't recommend it. So we're going to do it again. Yeah, this is we're going to try not to keep it from going too long, but there's a lot. This is a lot to deal with Wizard of Oz. Let's begin with our author.
Our author is L. Frank Baum, Lyman Frank Baum. He went by Frank. He didn't like his first name. He was born 1856 in New York, Chittenango, New York. I'm not sure where that is. Chittenango.
It's in Madison County.
Oh, thank you. So he's written over 14 novels for the Oz series alone. He's also written 41 more other novels. He's written 83 short stories, over 200 poems, written several scripts. He's written several plays. He was an editor off and on for newspapers. The man only lived to be 61. So it's quite a prodigious output for this man, but he's always been writing. He started when he was young. His dad bought him a really cheap printing press, and so he used to make his own little papers. All accounts by his friends and family, he was fun, he was festive, people adored him. He was passionate about the theater, and he wrote and performed several plays. And during the time that's called the South Dakota years in his life, he ran a general store with his wife, which closed. And then he ran a newspaper. He was the editor of a newspaper. And this is around 1891, where was a thing called the Wounded Knee Massacre, where it was genocide against Native Americans.
It's one of the worst episodes in American history. If you're looking at like top 5, it's in there. It's just horrendous what happened to the indigenous people at the hands of the United States. So yes, go on. Sorry, I just wanted to interject that it was super bad. It was real bad. It was not like a skirmish.
No, it was not. And he wrote a very, passionate editorial and in his paper, and basically justifying the murder of these people, the extinction of them as a people.
He wrote 2 editorials.
Yes.
He didn't stop at 1. He wrote 2.
And it's very hard to read it. It's very hard because, like we said, all the other indications were he was a lovely man, very lighthearted. He loved Christmas. He loved his friends and his family. He loved kids. He supported women's suffrage. Yes. His mother-in-law, his wife's mother, was an early suffragette. He was very attached to the women's movement right away. So it's a weird, dark stain on his character. It remains there. I think at times later on, he tried to say it was satire, and some other people, a number of years after his death, tried to also label it as satire. It's not satire. It's what he really felt at the time, or he was just trying to sell papers.
Yeah, either way,
it's disgusting.
It's really awful, and I quite agree. Yeah, the scholarship kind of goes back and forth, but it would be one thing if it was just the one editorial, but the fact that there's 2 of them, and when you read them, it's hard to, you can't really put it out of your mind. It's awful. It's just awful.
Yes.
So there's that.
That was in 1891. So The Wizard of Oz was written and created in 1900, turn of the new century. And he created it along with W.W. Denslow, who was an illustrator. And it was an immediate mega success. Like we said, there were 13 other novels that were written about it. And he originally wanted to create a musical stage version. Now, this is 1900 when this book is released. He wrote a musical version. There were a couple of films, like early silent era films. And for the rest of and the rest of his life, by the way, he was in and out of debt. So every time he got money, he spent it right away. And so he went through his Oz money pretty quickly. And so towards the end of his life, he was pretty broke. And they think that added to his stress. He, like I said, he died 61. He died of complications from a stroke. And so that's our L. Frank Baum. And he got the name for Oz by looking at a file cabinet. And, file cabinets you label alphabetically. And he just looked over and it said O to Z. And he just said Oz. And that is the Wizard of Oz. That's how he created it.
Yeah. So he did a lot of stuff. He was he was productive. He wrote and wrote and wrote. And as you said, he did these theater productions. And yeah, it was a monster hit, kind of like we were talking about recently, A Christmas Carol, that it was just immediately a hit. People immediately wanted to adapt it to the stage and do musical numbers of it. And it was a phenomenon and continues to be. I mean, that it was from 1900 and we're in 2019 now. And my children are very well aware of the characters and the story of the Wizard of Oz. That's amazing.
Yeah. And they're pretty cheap to get on Kindle. So I think it's in public domain now. So it's very easy to get. It's a great read. It's funny because I reread the book and I re-listened to it. Like I went back and forth, which you can do. It's called Whisper Sync. You can do that with Audible and your Kindle. And I forgot how scary this book is. It's very, very so scary.
Yeah. It's not the Technicolor skipping down the lane kind of story that's in the movie. So yeah, just to wrap up Oz, Frank Baum. Yes, he wrote many, many other series, some of them under pseudonyms. He wrote part of the Oz series here in my neck of the woods in San Diego on Coronado Island. So as a kid, I got to visit the Oz house, people call it. He spent summers, I think he rented a house in Coronado, which is an island off of San Diego. And if you've ever been to the famed Hotel del Coronado, which was the scene for Some Like It Hot. With Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis, the ballroom in that hotel, that's the Hotel del Coronado, has these beautiful, they're gorgeous. There are these beautiful chandeliers that are shaped like a crown, like the imperial margarine crown. And they were designed by L. Frank Baum. So he was really involved with the community when he spent his time there. And yeah, every now and again, they open up the house to the public, and especially around Christmas, they like to do it around then. So yeah, very interesting character. But yeah, this book is scary AF, as the children say nowadays.
Well, let's just get into the basic story.
Yeah.
The basic plot is there. Dorothy is in the book, she's a very young girl. You get the idea she's around like 9 or 10. And
yeah, she's little. Yeah.
And she's actually pretty plucky. She's not a damsel in distress.
No.
And she's growing up with her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, and she has a little dog named Toto. And there's a cyclone that hits their Kansas house, and she gets swept away to the magical land of Oz. And in the book, she kills the Wicked Witch of the East, who is the ruler of the Munchkins, which is also different from the movie. And then the Good Witch of the North shows up and congratulates her and then gives her a kiss on her forehead, which leaves an imprint. And I kind of tells her, if she wants to go home, she needs to go to Emerald City and meet the great Wizard of Oz. And so Dorothy starts going along, and there is a yellow brick road, and she meets the Scarecrow, and she meets the Tin Woodman. The Tin Woodman is a different story because In the movie, he's just always been a Tin Woodman and just sort of neglected. Right. Where in the story, he was actually a man. And he was.
Oh, it's horrifying.
Oh, Jesus.
It's so awful. To me, it's the grimmest, grisliest part of the whole book is the story of the Tin
Woodman is so depressing. Yeah. Well, just to give you context too, so he was born, like I said, in 1856. This is post. So when he's growing up, America is getting out of the Civil War, and the Civil War is one of those first wars where veterans came home and they had body parts attached to them. They had body parts blown off, and then they put metal. What's the word I'm thinking of? Like arms.
Prosthetic.
Thank you, prosthetics to their arms and their legs. And they were living with these battle scars. And that kind of gave him the idea of seeing all these men walking around with these limbs that were made of metal. That was part of the idea that gave him the idea for the Tin Man. The Tin Man falls in love with a Munchkin girl, and the Munchkin girl's mother is not into this. So she kind of puts a spell on him, and he chops off his arm. And then he replaces it with metal. He chops off another arm. He chops off a leg. He chops himself up into bits. And eventually he just becomes a metal person. And it is so disturbing to read. And and he's a very upsetting character. But it's interesting. I mean, it's you're totally in on it. And then there's also the Cowardly Lion. And he wants courage. The Scarecrow wants a brain. And the Tin Woodman wants a heart because he thinks that because he cut himself up, he no longer has a heart. And then he and Dorothy, they all go along to see the Emerald City. And the witch tries to stop Dorothy in this book. And there's at one point where she sends something called Kalidas, I believe is how it's pronounced. And it's Kalidahs. And it's like a tiger body with a bear head, or a bear head with a tiger body. I forget
what's scarier than that?
Yeah, it's a combo of that. And the
I read.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the first time I tried to read this, I thought I was going to read this story to my kids. We had a blackout, like the power went out, and I forget why. Wildfires or something. We had a blackout for like several days at one point. And I thought, I'll read to the children. And what do I have to read? Oh, I've got The Wizard of Oz. And I started to read that. They made me stop because it was too scary. In the dark with no power, reading about the Kalidas and the, it's such a scary story.
Well, so what happens is that the Tin Woodman chops all their heads off. And then she sends wolves, and then she sends, what else does she send?
Bees, I think at one point.
And crows to peck their eyes out. And the Scarecrow kills the crows by breaking all of their necks. Like this is what happens. And then there's she uses what's called the power of the golden cap. And that's to send the winged monkeys out to get Dorothy, all of them. And Dorothy is captured. And by the way, in the book, she's wearing silver shoes. They're not ruby shoes, they're silver shoes. And those are her magic power shoes. And then when Dorothy finds out, gets upset at her, she takes a bucket of water, throws it at the Wicked Witch. She melts. And then eventually Dorothy finds her way back to the wizard. And then Glinda the Good Witch meets her there, and they meet Glinda, and Glinda basically says, the Cowardly Lion becomes a king in one district, and they all get these wonderful things to happen to them. And Glinda basically says to Dorothy, you have the power now. So this is when Glinda finally shows up at the end of the book. In the book, Glinda shows up and says, you have the power to come home. Just, wish yourself, knock your heels together, and then you will be home. And then Dorothy just comes home to see and sees her Auntie Em, and she just says, I'm so glad to be home again. And in the book, Oz is a real world. It's not a dream world. It's a real world.
Oh, yes. It's very much a real world because there's a whole series. One of the things I really like about the book that's different in the movie is the Emerald City. The Emerald City is not green. It's basically white, like everything is white, but you wear different tinted glasses to make everything look like it's green or red or whatever they choose that day. So the Emerald City, you're wearing green spectacles to make everything look green. It's not that the stuff is green, which I think is a really interesting touch. I mean, they could have done that in the movie, but anyway. I like that. At one point, one other thing that's different is before Dorothy throws the water on the Wicked Witch of the West, the witch manages to get one of the shoes away from Dorothy, which is different than in the movie. And then, as of course, being silver shoes, that's a very different thing as well. Not as technicolor-y, I guess, for a movie. But that's basically it. It's super scary. Right? And gross sometimes. And yeah, it's way scarier. There's, like you said, there's these overtones that would have been more relevant in America immediately following the Civil War. And also there are, they go to these different lands, kind of like in Gulliver's Travel. They go to this land, the Munchkins, and that land of the Winkies. And so there are also these kind of racial themes that are interwoven throughout the book that you don't really get in the movie, but definitely worth reading, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a quick read or a quick listen.
Uh-huh.
It's just like every once in a while when they're going to the source material, you're just going to say out loud, like, wait, what? Because it's just not what you expect if you've always just watched The Wizard of Oz on TV like I did growing up.
I love the illustrations. I think they're wonderful. I love those illustrations by Denslow. And I really liked, when I was a kid, I really liked the whole Oz series very much. But let's talk, because, most people know the 1939 movie, of course, which was a landmark in filmmaking, apart from, all the other things that it did. So let's talk about that.
Okay, so let's play the trailer first.
Many, many miles east of nowhere lies the amazing land of Oz, a magnificent empire created in the mind of a man who wrote a great book about it. Like wildfire in the wheat field, the fabulous tale of the Wizard of Oz spread from town to city to nation to the entire world. Although the Wizard of Oz has captivated the children of 4 generations and fired the imaginations of those youthful adults who have never grown old, although 10 million copies of the book have reached eager hands and eager hearts, no one has dared the towering task of giving life and reality to the land of Oz and its people. Every delightful character of L. Frank Baum's classic is now reborn. Every glorious adventure has been recaptured and painted with a rainbow. The celebration in Munchkinland, the flying monkeys, the rescue of Dorothy, the castle of the witch, the palace of Oz, and Dorothy's strange journey to the Emerald City to find the wonderful Wizard of Oz himself.
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. We hear he is the Wizard of Wiz, if ever a Wiz there was. If ever a Wiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
So MGM decides they're going to make The Wizard of Oz. As I've said before, there were a couple of musical versions in theater. There were a couple of silent versions that were out there. But Louis B. Mayer, who ran MGM Pictures, the Snow White from Disney came out the year or so before, and it did super well. And so MGM wanted their own fairy tale. And Oz is considered one of the first American fairy tales that to kind of capture the imagination of the public. So they paid $75,000 for the rights from the family of Baum, which is an extraordinary amount of money when you consider this is Depression era America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's like 14 writers, 5 different directors. Many people worked on this. For a while, it was going to be Shirley Temple that was going to be our Dorothy. She would have been the right age. She was a little younger than Judy Garland, but she couldn't sing. And the part did require singing and dancing. And so this movie ultimately that gets the credit for it is Victor Fleming, and our star is Judy Garland. And you and I were talking off the air before we hit record. I told you, if you ever really want to bum yourself out, just read the life story of Judy Garland. It is just such a tragedy.
It's horrendous. It's so sad. I just want to point out, just because I know some people are probably going, oh, but Shirley Temple could sing. Yeah, Shirley Temple could sing, but if you hear what was demanded of Judy Garland's voice alone in this movie, it's a little out of her scope. Shirley Temple's scope. No. And Shirley Temple also made what was supposed to be a competing film. She was instead cast in something called like The Bluebird of Happiness or something like that. Oh, it's awful. It's a terrible movie. But the other studio tried to make a competing movie with The Wizard of Oz, because everybody knew that The Wizard of Oz was going into production and that they were going to be doing color. And so Shirley Temple's studio decided to kind of capitalize on that, and they did this other really terrible movie. But Judy Garland, yes, is old. How old was she when they made this movie?
16, 17.
Yeah.
And she was born Frances Gumm. She had a mother that was a stage mom, as we would say, really pushed Judy to perform when she was very, very young. Her father died, that she was crazy about and who was a closeted homosexual, died in 1935. So just a few years before, when she was like 12. And like I said, the story just gets sadder and sadder.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's horrible. And so she gets hired. Louis B. Mayer, they want Judy Garland to be the next star. And at first, if you look at old stills and stuff, they made Dorothy kind of a sex pot. Like, she has blonde hair. They had Judy Garland test it with blonde hair and big red lipstick. And then somebody kind of came along and said, you know what, that's kind of gross. No, she needs to be a little more wholesome. She's a girl from Kansas. And so Judy Garland was signed, but she was told to lose weight because she was fat. And this is about the time when the studios put her and her friends, Mickey Rooney and other young stars, they were on pills all day to pep them up, to give them energy so they could do those dance numbers. And then they gave them sedatives to sleep at night when they had to sleep. And she was on this roller coaster ride literally her entire life. She died in 1969 at the age of 47, which is just
right. Oh, and again, if you really want to bum yourself out, go look up some of her final interviews and keep telling yourself that this woman is only 47.
It's unbelievable. She also had a cycle of, like, she was told she was fat when she was young, and they put her on a diet of coffee and chicken soup, and Mayer would send people to her house to spy on her to make sure she's not eating too much. And it's infuriating. God. They taped down her breasts so she would try to appear younger. And they worked this poor girl, and she was underage, so she had to be tutored on the set. So she would work 4 hours, and then she'd have school for 3 hours, and then they'd make her work again. And she would basically, the whole cast, and if you ask every single member of the cast, and we'll go through them, they would all tell you, almost all of them anyway, especially the 4 main leads would say it was a very hard shoot. They had to get up about 4:30 in the morning. That was their call time, and they wouldn't leave till like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So it's just unbelievable and sad to say. Let's see who else she was in this movie. So we have Frank Morgan as Professor Marvel. He's the Wizard of Oz. He's the gatekeeper. He's the carriage driver. He's in this movie. I
love him.
Oh, he's so good. Apparently he was a bit of a drinker and would keep bottles of whiskey around, like on hand. And then we have Ray Bolger. There's also, by the way, in the book, there are these farmhands. In the movie, there are farmhands, and they play a part in this movie in Dorothy's life in black and white, which is the first 20 minutes of this movie. So he plays Hunk in the Kansas version, then he's the Scarecrow in Oz. And then we have Zeke, who's Bert Lahr, and he plays the Cowardly Lion in Oz. And then we have a man named Hickory, who's played by Jack Haley, who is the Tin Man. And originally the Tin Man was supposed to be Buddy Epson, but Buddy Epson, they spray painted him with this silver paint, and he was sent to the hospital and almost died because it nearly killed him, the stuff that they used.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, poor Judy Garland. She's all up on the pills and she's got her boobs bound down. And I think they even used to put they put this thing in her nose to make it look perkier.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, it's horrible. I mean, they just treated them like utter crap. And yeah, okay, let's spray you with this poison makeup and see how that works out. Oh, too bad. We'll just give the part to somebody else.
And by the way, after all that, I mean,
almost dying.
But Buddy Epson's in the hospital. He found out that he lost the part, and he almost died. By the way, and he did fine. He was in the Beverly Hillbillies, and he got that money going. But supposedly, also, Judy Garland was shunned by her co-stars because Ray Bolger, Bert Lahr, and Jack Haley kind of resented being in a movie led by a girl. I mean, it's just like she can't win. No.
Oh, it's so sad. I know. Yeah. But Dorothy was a big part. It kind of like Scarlett O'Hara almost,
Yep.
it was a big deal that she got it. And so I guess, yeah, all right, I'll take pills. I'll put the thing in my nose. And I don't know if she did that on this movie or not, but I kind of remember seeing somewhere along the way that they had like a metal thing to make her nose look perkier. Because her nose if you look at her face from The Wizard of Oz and you look at like her earlier when she's singing with her sisters, it is not the same nose. She might have gotten a nose job at some point, but yeah.
It's terrible. And so we have Uncle Henry, we have Auntie Em, and then we have Miss Gulch, who okay, let me say all this about this movie, by the way. It is 1 hour and 40 minutes. There is not a wasted second in this movie.
No,
They go to one of my favorite songs of all times, and it's considered one of the most beautiful songs of all time, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which, by the way, they almost took it out because they thought it slowed down the picture. But she sings this beautiful song, and then right as she's done, like not even 2 seconds later, Miss Gulch shows up, and it's Margaret Hamilton on the bike, just coming over, and and she is a terrifying meanie. Margaret Hamilton, who, by the way, in real life was maybe like 38 years old. She was a single mom. She was a kindergarten teacher. She loved the Wizard of Oz books so much. Was supposedly just the sweetest, nicest lady ever. She was really Judy Garland's only friend on the set. She said that that was the one person she could hang out with. And Margaret Hamilton, by the way, she said when her agent called her for the part, he says, "Hey, you got a part in Wizard of Oz?" She goes, "Well, great. Who am I playing?" He said, well, Wicked Witch of the West, of course. She's like, "Oh, okay, thanks." She got, when you see her, when she becomes the Wicked Witch in the Oz version, she's wearing green makeup that made her very, very sick and every day. And she was only supposed to be there for a couple of weeks, and she stayed for 3 months. And she's considered one of the top villains of all time. And I forget how scary she is, but I just saw this movie again the other day, and she terrifies me.
I thought you said she was dead.
That was her sister, the Wicked Witch of the East. This is the Wicked Witch of the West. She's worse than the other one was.
Who killed my sister? Who killed the Witch of the East? Was it you? No, it was an accident. I didn't mean to kill anybody.
Well, my little pretty, I can cause accidents too. Aren't you forgetting the ruby slippers?
The slippers. Yes, the slippers.
They're gone. The ruby slippers. What have you done with them? Give them back to me or I'll... It's too late. There they are, and there they'll stay. Give me back my slippers. I'm the only one that knows how to use them. They're no use to you. Give them back to me. Give them back. Keep tight inside of them. Their magic must be very powerful, or she wouldn't want them so badly. You stay out of this, Glinda, or I'll fix you as well. Oh, rubbish. You have no power here. Be gone. before somebody drops the house on you. Very well. I'll bide my time. And as for you, my fine lady, it's true, I can't attend you here and now as I'd like. But just try to stay out of my way. Just try. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
Oh, she's wonderful in this. She's so scary. She's scary in both characters. I find her equally scary as Miss Gulch.
Absolutely. She's trying to take Toto away. She's going to drown the dog. Wait, what? and we also see Professor Marvel. He's like, that's Frank Morgan. Like, what? So Dorothy's going to run away. And that's when she sees Frank Morgan as Professor Marvel, and he's like reading her future, reading like in a glass globe. What's that called? A crystal ball. And then a cyclone is coming. So Dorothy needs to go home. And it's a very famous scene where the house gets picked up. Everybody else is in shelter. Dorothy's in the house gets picked up, and then it lands in Oz. And that's all of a sudden the film becomes from black and white into Technicolor. And it's one of the greatest reveals ever, I think.
It still is so magical when she opens that door. I hold my breath every time.
And by the way, people always say that the band Pink Floyd recorded Dark Side of the Moon to time it with this movie. It's like potheads came up with this theory like in the 70s or something. But there's a song called Money, and it's a pretty famous Pink Floyd song, but as soon as it goes into the color, Money begins. It's really crazy. But there's a YouTube version you could see. You can check this out for yourself. So she lands on the house of the Wicked Witch of the North, and that's when we meet Glinda the Good Witch. And so we have two witches. We have Miss Gulch, and then she becomes the Wicked Witch of the West. And then we have Billie Burke as Glinda. Billie Burke, by the way, this woman in this movie, is 55 years old.
Right?
Oh my God, she's beautiful.
I love her. I love everybody in this movie so much. But yeah, she's gorgeous.
Insanely gorgeous. And so she
was, by the way, she was married to Florence Ziegfeld of the Ziegfeld Follies.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So she gives Dorothy a little kiss on the forehead. And then, also, this is when we meet the Munchkins. And there's all kinds of stuff you could read about the Munchkins and what they were up to on the set of this movie.
Yeah. We'll just leave it at that.
Judy Garland would go on talk shows. She was a great talk show guest, and she would just tell these ribald stories. And some of them are it ranges from either a few. There was, by the way, quite a few that were from Germany, and they were escaping Hitler. These were little people escaping Hitler and came to America and got this work visa, and that was how they got to America. Or otherwise, they would have been killed by the Nazis. So it's just crazy. And then we have this very famous sequence where Dorothy is given, is being performed to by the Munchkins. There's the little ballerina, and then there's the Lollipop Guild. And these are all just super famous. It just, like I said, this movie doesn't have a wasted second.
No.
Everything happens so quickly and right away. I kind of wish it was longer. There was a longer version of it that was.
There were some things that were cut.
Yeah.
Some whole numbers that they just decided to cut. A lot of the Munchkins belonged to an American troupe called, unfortunately, Singers Midgets. Did you ever see The Terror of Tiny Town?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
I've seen it. I have seen it, and it's a 1938 cowboy westerny kind of movie, and everyone in the movie is a little person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically sort of it's not complimentary sort of a thing, but yeah, so a lot of them were part of this theatrical troupe. I think there were like 30 of them or a couple dozen of them that were managed by this guy named Leo von Singer. And so they were Singers Midgets, and I believe they are billed, I think they might even be billed as such in the movie.
In the credits, it just says the Munchkins. Like, they don't even get individual names. America was very different back then. Let's just say this. It was a totally different time. And we have a really cute dog, Toto, who I always just think is completely... that dog is so cute.
That dog is amazing. That dog is an incredible actor.
Oh, absolutely. During the dance sequences where he's just kind of skipping along with them, he's incredible. And so the story, you guys, you know this movie by now. Dorothy meets the Scarecrow, and I love Ray Bolger. If I Only Had a Brain, I love his sequence. Yeah. The Tin Man had a song too, but they dropped it. And then we have Bert Lahr as the Cowardly Lion, and supposedly his costume weighed 90 pounds.
Whoa. Oh,
and it was made with real animal fur, and it was on set. It could get up to 100 degrees.
Oh,
so his costume had to be cleaned every few days, and he said people drew straws, who would take the costume away. The Ray Bolger for the Scarecrow, they put this rubber stuff on his face to make it appear like a scarecrow, and he said the lines on his face where they applied the glue stayed on his face for almost a year. He couldn't get rid of it. It was a miserable shoot. Let's say this for these people. The guy said they all eat in their trailers because nobody in the commissary would sit with them. And and then so Dorothy, there's also a scene where there's the poppy seeds, and the Wicked Witch has it snow, and that snow that you see, that's asbestos.
Yeah, because it wasn't bad enough.
I mean,
let's just sprinkle some asbestos over all these actors. Because the makeup didn't get them.
Oh, Margaret Hamilton, by the way, the first time she flies up in a pot of smoke, right? It's the first time we meet the Wicked Witch. And she's like, "I'll get you, my pretty," and she swirls around and it's a flash of a fire, and it was her and a stunt woman, and they were both burned in that scene, and that's the one take they had because they both had to go to the hospital. And the winged monkeys, it was men in suits. Those aren't monkeys, obviously, you could tell, but they were men in suits, and a couple of them, their wires got dropped and they just fell. It's
you just would never be able to do that now.
I don't know how they got away with it. I mean, it's just the rules and regulations that we have nowadays. They wouldn't be able to get away with it. And Dorothy goes to the Wizard of Oz. She meets him. He says, "Well, if you kill the witch, I'll grant you all of your wishes." And very famous scene, Dorothy gets kidnapped. Boy, when she's kidnapped by those monkeys, when I was a little kid, we watched this every year as a family. I got terrified of those monkeys, monkeys being able to drag me away. But
they're so scary.
They are scary. Yeah. And then so Dorothy gets.
But at least in the movie. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say at least in the movie, that's the only scary thing. In the book, it's thing after thing after thing. It's so many scary. The flying monkeys are small potatoes compared to all the other stuff that's going on in the book. So I agree with the movies. Let's just have the one scary.
Yeah. So Dorothy, she throws. It's very famous. I love actually the scene where they have the the guards with the fur hats, and then Ray Bolger, Bert Lahr, and Jack Haley, they knock him out, and then put them on over their costumes. They wear these, of the guards. And they go in and they rescue Dorothy, and then Dorothy and I love it when has Toto escapes. When Toto escapes, it makes me so happy. But then Dorothy, just like in the book, she takes a bucket of water and she throws it at the witch, and the witch is melting. Very, very famous scene.
To go, we'll see the first 3 go before her, and her mangy little dog too. How about a little fire, Scarecrow? Oh, my world. Who thought I could lose her like you to destroy my beautiful Wicked?
And then Dorothy goes to meet the Wizard of Oz and to present him her burnt, what's the word I'm thinking of? Her broomstick.
Broom.
Yeah. And brings that broomstick to him. And it's also, once again, we're going to go to like another very famous scene, and Frank Morgan is so hilarious in this. And because he's just like, well, that was good, but now I'm going to need some other things from you people because blah, 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 blah. And that's when Toto comes over and he takes the little curtain and grabs it. And that's when you realize that he's BSing being the Wizard of Oz. It's just like, it's all this man. And very famous line, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. That's where that comes from. And then, so Dorothy's like super bummed out because he says, I don't know if, he's going to put her in a balloon. They're going to take a balloon ride and bring her back to Kansas. After he gave the Cowardly Lion, gave him courage, he gave the Tin Man a heart, and he gave the Scarecrow brain, and then he supposedly says the Pythagorean theorem. I can never say that correctly, but it's completely wrong, by the way. Like math nerds will tell you that that's completely wrong. And then Dorothy is in the basket, and then Toto jumps out because somebody just brings a cat to an event. And so Dorothy jumps out the basket to rescue Toto, and that's when the wizard takes off. And you're all upset, but that's when Glenda the Good Witch comes back, and she says to Dorothy, well, you know what? You had this in you the whole time. You just have to click your heels, and you'll be home. And she's like, well, why didn't you tell me? She goes, oh, you wouldn't have believed me.
Asbestos.
And she just, well, you wouldn't have believed me. And nobody questions us. Like, oh, okay.
No, okay.
And that's kind of the end of the movie. Like I said, it's a tight film. I mean, there's no breaks in here. I think they took a 2-hour film and they brought it down to 140, and it still holds up, and it did fine. They spent $3 million on it at the time, and they made $3 million at the box office. But at the time, it was also when Gone with the Wind was out, and nothing could beat Gone with the Wind. It was that was a massive, massive hit. So this movie, by the way, it gets like 100% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And at the time, everybody, all the reviewers loved this movie, but it's very famous. There's one guy that gave it an absolutely scathing review, and his name is Otis Ferguson. He wrote for the New Republic, and he starts right away with like, this movie has no sense of humor, and just dumps on it the whole time. It's actually kind of funny to read, and I'll post it into the Facebook group. But he's just a crank. And sadly, he enters the war and is killed in action in World War II. But if you are wondering why it doesn't have a perfect 100% score, it's because this one person didn't think it was that great.
A couple other interesting things. The Wizard of Oz was recently in the news at the end of last year because famously the pair of ruby slippers that were in the Smithsonian for all these years were mismatched, which people knew that for a long time, that they were, because there were many, many pairs made. I mean, there was quite a few pairs made for the production of the movie. And there was also famously a pair stolen.
Right.
From, I think, a Judy Garland museum, and FBI recovered the pair that was stolen, and they figured out amazingly that pair was also mismatched. So it was like the right and the left, it was mismatched with the pair that's in the Smithsonian. So they were able to reunite swap out the shoes that were the wrong pair from the stolen pair and the Smithsonian pair. and restore both pairs. I think they did. And yeah, just amazing. All this forensics that they did on the sequins and whatnot.
Supposedly, if you go to the Smithsonian, they have to redo the carpet by that area where the ruby slippers are, because so many people go there specifically to see the ruby slippers, which I would.
I remember seeing them. When we went when I was a kid. And another thing, when which I didn't realize, that Dorothy's outfit, her dress, her gingham dress, when they shot it in black and white, she had a different sepia tone one to make it look more colorless before she was in the Technicolor part. So it's not the same dress even.
No, and I should say that the big difference is in the ending of the movie. Dorothy wakes up, it's black and white again, and it was all just a dream. And you were there, and you were there. And there was supposedly going to be a line. There was a line, and it was said by Ray Bolger, basically hunk, saying, "Hey, Dorothy, I'm going off for this gig, but I hope to see you soon." He kind of wanted to imply that there was going to be a romance between them eventually. I know. He was 35 when he made this movie. It's just good. There's very good choices that were made, thank God. But they took that scene out because that's just weird. But the movie did okay at the time, and then 10 years later they put it out again in movie theaters, and it did exceptionally well. And then in 1956 CBS broadcast it, and it's the first time it's on television. They had black and white, and then they went right into color, and 54 million people tuned in to see it, which is crazy.
It's hard to wrap your head around. Yeah, especially for then, when not everybody had a television.
Right.
So, we say 54 million people. That's not 54 million homes. Like in some cases, this would be like one television in a church hall with 200 people in it.
Yeah. Or your entire family would come over. Mm-hmm. And in my family, I don't know about you, I forget which time of year it was released, but we would watch it together. It was a big deal.
Oh, yes. I can't remember. It was around a holiday. It was around like Easter or something.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time it came out on video was in 1980. And then since then, it's been released on DVD. It's on Blu-ray. They had a 3D version that they put out there. And it's the classic that we all know right now. And, I don't know about you. I super, super enjoyed this movie. Like I said, it goes by so quickly. And I just forget how great all the songs are.
It's wonderful music. The man who does the music for the movie, what is his name? With an S. Stothart. Herbert Stothart. He was he wrote a lot of movie music and a lot of other popular music. This was by far his biggest hit of his career. But he also, speaking of Some Like It Hot, he also wrote "I Want to Be Loved by You." That Marilyn Monroe sings in that movie. It's an old song. It's a song from the 20s, I think. But the same guy that wrote that song wrote all the music in The Wizard of Oz.
It was one of the many nominations that it got for an Academy Award for Best Picture, Cinematography, Art Direction, which I would say, yes. The art direction is incredible.
It really is.
I mean, my God, when you get to to Oz and everything's in green, like all those people are in green, including the horses, and then it changes color as they're going into different rooms as they're all getting groomed. I mean, it's just, the set pieces are just unbelievable. But the one of the few awards that it won was actually for Judy Garland, they used to give out an Oscar for best juvenile performance. Mm-hmm. And so she won for that. But as I said before, this is the same exact time as Gone with the Wind, and Gone with the Wind won everything. But the Academy Awards, The Wizard of Oz did win for best song for Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which is like always when you're talking about the best songs of all time featured in a movie, it's always up there, and for best score.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it did suffer a lot by being released the same time as Gone with the Wind, which we haven't done Gone with the Wind, have we?
No, we get requested for that. I can't read that. I can never get into that book. I know it's your sister's favorite.
It is my sister's favorite book, and she's read it many times. And so it was always in our house, growing up, because she always had a copy of it. And every now and again, I would pick it up. And I love to read. I would pick it up, and I just start reading.
Yeah,
I don't
same
know
here.
why.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
I love that movie.
And we were talking about the magic of when Dorothy goes from the black and white into the color and how mind blowing. And I can imagine how mind blowing it must have been on television too, but maybe not so mind blowing compared to the lush, dramatic scope of A Gone with the Wind. That scene in Atlanta where there's the bodies and bodies and bodies and bodies and the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. I think that was unfortunate that, if it had been the year before or the year after, it probably, I just think maybe she could have retired then and had a real nice life, but no.
No, so Judy went on to marry a couple of times. She had 3 kids, I want to say. She had Liza, she had Lorna, and I believe and Joey. And Liza, boy, is a fantastic performer. I mean, they're all really talented. But she was married a couple of times. She married a couple. It seemed to be this theme in her life is like she was attracted to much older men. And because of, she was introduced to sex at a very young age and a lot of gay men. And she would form because of her father. As we said, she died in 1969. And the other people, Margaret Hamilton, I loved it. Margaret Hamilton was so feared by little kids because of her performance that years and years later, she was invited to be on the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood as a guest.
I love that. It's so wonderful. We have to put it in the Facebook group.
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I put it in the Facebook group and a couple of people asked, how come Mr. Rogers has the Wicked Witch of the West costume hanging around? And it's like, guys, it was a TV show. She was a guest. It's a prop. These things are produced, but she was wonderful because, and you could see how sweet she was and how really lovely she was. And she would always do the fan convention stuff. And she was very proud of being the Wicked Witch of the West. And she's considered one of the top movie villains of all time. And like, she's up there when you get these polls up there with like Hannibal Lecter. Like she's that level.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's a spectacular performance.
Yeah.
And as I said before, not just as the witch, she's more screen time as the witch, but as Miss Gulch, she's freaking scary.
Oh, good God! When she steals the dog.
Yep.
Oh, and so yeah, Margot, like book versus movie, which is your preference?
Movie.
Same here. I always have time for this movie.
Me too. I don't always have time for Frank Baum's racism, but I do have time for this movie.
You like the Victor Fleming version?
I do.
Yeah,
I do. I prefer it. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
it's The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it's a classic.
So what are we doing next?
Well, we had a few suggestions, and you and I were talking. Our last episode, we replayed the Cider House Rules, but which by the way, that was our first episode last year. So we were saying Happy New Year, and we dropped this on like New Year's Eve. But we were talking about our top 5 picks. And so a couple of Thaddeus from the Facebook group took our picks. And these were the things you and I decided we wanted to cover.
Yeah, we talked about.
Yeah, we talked about. Like, what would you like to cover? What would I like to cover? And he put up a poll of all of our choices. And one of them was voted out, outstandingly versus the others. So I figured maybe we go for that next. And it's The Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, people have been asking for so long.
Yeah,
I think it's time for us to do Shawshank. I agree. Yeah, it's funny. I hadn't seen that because I've been so busy. I haven't been on Facebook very much lately. So that's really cool.
Yeah,
that's amazing that he did that.
Yeah,
and that people voted. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So we can't then not do Shawshank. Of course, we have to do it next.
And you guys, it's a novella. It's a super quick read, and it's also available on Audible if you want to listen to it instead. And the movie is always considered. It was like the #1 film for a while, considered like of all time. But it's always up there. But I just figured, just for something a little different. Why don't we do The Shawshank Redemption next? So I guess, Margot, we're going to make a real big left turn here into The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, we are.
Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We're a part of the Spreaker Podcast Network. Go to Spreaker.com to check out all of the shows they offer. We ask that you make sure to subscribe to our podcast, Book vs. Movie, in your podcast app, so that way you'll never miss an episode. If you want to interact with the Margos, the best place to do that is in our private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. On social media, you can find us on Instagram and Threads. You spell out Book versus and Movie. Our email is bookversusmoviepodcast, spelled it out, at gmail.com. This is Margot D, and you can find me at my blog, brooklynfitchick.com, and I'm at Brooklyn Fitchick for Threads and Instagram. And on TikTok, I'm at Brooklyn Margot. I'm also at Brooklyn Margot for Blue Sky. Margot P